Everyone, and Happy New Year again. To comply with social distancing guidelines, this meeting is going to be held online. The City of Fort Lauderdale will be hosting its meetings in a virtual format until further notice. The public can listen to and view virtual meetings at fortlauderdale.gov/FLTV and on Comcast Channel 78 and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. For those who want to speak on this agenda item or have not already signed up to do so, they can please visit www.fortlauderdale.gov/VC meetings to sign up to speak. If there's any technical assistance that is needed, please call 954-828-3587. To ensure that we keep the same decorum as in our personal meetings, we ask that you please abide by the following guidelines, and that is to refrain from any behavior that is disruptive during the meeting. While you are on the phone waiting for your opportunity to speak, please mute the meeting broadcast on FLTV. And once you have completed speaking, you will be muted and may either hang up to exit the meeting, or you can stay connected to listen to the remainder of the meeting. That concludes the notes that I need to read in.
All right, welcome everybody to the January 4th meeting of the Infrastructure Task Force. Would you like to please take the roll? Shall
Marilyn?
I take it, or would you like to take it?
I can take it. I got you. Can
Okay.
you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Marilyn,
Present?
Ralph,
Present.
Peter,
Present.
Roosevelt. I did see him, but Roosevelt, can you hear us? Just noting for the record that I can see that he's here, but maybe the moderator needs to help him. Jacqueline.
Happy New Year.
Shane.
Present.
Charlie.
Here.
And I do not see Gerald or Michael.
Do we have a quorum?
You do have a quorum. Did you want to note for the record what you were saying before the meeting about Norman?
Yes, just right before we start, I'd like to thank Norman. I always get him confused with the other guy, Norman Ostroff. Norman Ostroff. Wanted to thank Norman for his service to the Infrastructure Task Force. He was one of the very early members, and they don't make them like Norman anymore, let me tell you. So getting on with our meeting. It is, where is our agenda? Can somebody please put up the agenda? Or would you like me to do it?
Pauline, can you please pull up the agenda? Thank you.
Okay, getting on with our, whoa, what happened to it? Here we go, agenda. We've done the roll call. Could I please have an approval of the agenda? Would someone like to move to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
And seconded? Okay,
Second.
all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we also have the approval of the previous meeting minutes from December 7. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Go right ahead.
Page 12, second paragraph. The first sentence, Mr. Partington requested more information on how the Lowmire plant operates in the event of a storm. I was asking specifically what happened in Storm ETA, ETA. So to my mind, that should say requested information on how the plant operated during Storm ETA, ETA.
All right. Is everybody okay with that? Does anybody have anything else?
Yes, Chair Romano.
Yes, please.
On the very first page, Steve Hilberg, his title is incorrect and should be corrected to show Project Manager 2. Igor, his title also should be corrected to reflect Project Manager 2.
Okay. We'll take
And
that one.
on page 2, the same, to the very bottom.
Anisha, it is
corrected on our draft that was submitted for backup.
It is corrected. Okay, gotcha. Except for on page 9, it still is missing project manager 2 under by Steve Hilbert's name.
Okay. Any other comments on the minutes? With those corrections, we're going to vote to approve the minutes. Everybody in favor? Aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
Excuse me,
For the record, please.
a motion,
Hello?
and you need a motion in a second before you can vote on that.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'd like a motion to, yes.
I'm approval of the minute.
Peter made the motion. Jackie, are you seconding again?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, for the record, I'd like to welcome Jerry to the meeting.
Hello.
Hello, Jerry. Okay, back to the agenda. And I'm just going to put it on my screen so I can see it. All right. One thing that I want to bring to everyone's attention that was actually brought to my attention by Pauline was that we have a tendency to have these very long meetings. And as a consequence, sometimes we don't get to the information items in the back. And we have sort of ended up with a list of information items at the back of the agenda. And there are, in fact, a number of staff people here who are ready and able to describe and explain some of these pieces of information, which of course we have asked for. And again, when I took a look at the materials, the backup materials, there's a lot of very, very good information there. And so I'm wondering if we couldn't take out of the order, and it probably means we would have to make a motion to take it out of order, to move to do item number 6 first, because we have people here who are ready and able to explain some of these pieces of information that we previously asked for. So, yes?
Madam Chair, I would like to make a further motion on that, even in more depth. I think that there are oftentimes items that we need to be discussing early in the meeting. And we seem to spend an inordinate amount of time on general discussion and comments by committee members. Why don't we put that further down in the agenda routinely?
We could talk about doing that and going forward, but at this moment, it happens to be number 2. And the only way we can not make it number 2 is to, I believe, Roosevelt usually guides me in these things, to make a motion to amend the agenda to take item 6 out of order and make it item 2. And
So
I can't
moved.
make that motion.
I
You
make
made
that motion.
Jackie?
Yes.
Anybody second it?
I'll second it.
Okay, Peter seconded. Everyone in favor of the motion, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, so Anisha,
Chair.
you want to take over?
Well, Madam Chair, I just wanted to, first of all, thank you. That was the conversation that I had with you, not Pauline. And
I'm
it
sorry.
was not necessarily to bring number 6 up to the front, but more so to take it into consideration so we can get through a lot of those items. But since you've moved it, we can definitely go ahead and get started with that. If that's
I would appreciate that, because I want everybody to have an opportunity to understand and absorb all this backup material, because this is actually data that we need to do our work. So who do you want to start with first?
We can go ahead and get started with them in the order that they're there, but to make mention, number 4 as well as number 5, a lot of great information. The board has asked a lot of great questions, and we've worked really hard on this holiday week on break to pull together a lot of information. And I'll tell you, it was not easy because there were quite a few people on break for Christmas or New Year's. So there is a lot of information prepared to talk about. We're going to get started with the water and sewer bond expenditure report. That's the first thing on the list.
Thank you. Can you put it up? Can somebody put it up?
Pauline, if you could pull this up. And I'll tell you, this is a report that is in the same format that you guys have seen before. So it should get it should be consistent with what you've seen, and it should be a little bit easier for us to have that conversation. Pauline, are you able to pull that up?
I'm pulling it up now.
Thank you. So this document basically just provides the water and sewer bond expenditure, showing the $204 million that we've talked about in the past, which is the first tranche, and reflecting what our actuals have been spent as of December 28th. Now, many may be wondering why we're looking December 28th, but in order for us to get this prepared and get it in by Thursday, we had to choose a date, and that was the date we had to choose in order to get this information. There was a lot of expenditures that have taken place the last week of the month, particularly from Murphy and from Mancini, which are huge expenditures. And so the 50%, 50.8% that you'll see in the document, I'm sure is a lot higher. And actually, Famous was down today. Go back, thank you. Famous was down today because I really wanted to pull to give you a better picture of where we are as of today. But again, the system was down, and so I could not provide you with that. But this is the same presentation we talked about before in those particular categories, just showing you the budget, the actuals that has been expended by each of those categories, the encumbrances to date, as well as the balances. And so it's showing that those expenditures are still moving, and a lot has happened within the last couple of months. And based on the expenditures and the payments that I processed the last week of the month, we're going to see some millions that have been processed. I mean, huge numbers, because the redundant line project is moving very fast, and a lot of those bills were coming in at the end of the year.
Would it
Jackie.
be possible? Would it be possible to make the fonts larger? I can't. It's like a size 2 font on my screen. And I don't have the
Usually you can
ability.
open it up on your screen and zoom in and out. I know I can do that on my
Well,
screen.
usually it doesn't. Yeah, I'm doing everything, and it's
Okay.
very, very tiny.
Okay.
Does anybody else see it large or tiny?
Yeah, let me, what I suggest is with the blocking with the different members, you can drag that down to the bottom, and that'll put it horizontally across your screen. And that'll give you a room to see the diagrams and charts in its entirety.
I don't know how this.
I can't even drag it, so I'll just be quiet. But I
So,
can't see it.
Jackie,
hardly
when
either.
you look at this, you're seeing on your screen right now the sort of summary, which is the summary of all those charts that were very hard to read. So this
No, I'm not
is
even
sort of
seeing the charts. I'm seeing Water and Sewer Master Plan 2017,
Mhm.
and I see, and it's too tiny to read. I don't want to delay
okay.
the
Pauline?
meeting. Am I the only one that's having that problem?
If Pauline clicks Control Plus, she'll be able to zoom into her screen a little bit and enlarge the text.
That'd be great, because I can't hit the plus, obviously.
But
Well, while she's looking at that, I think that it's we might want to just
Wow, that's just.
it hasn't gotten any bigger. It's just, it is what it is. Okay, but by way of,
Chairman Mamano,
yes.
again, this is a report that you guys have asked for every month. So there is nothing specific to really go into. I just wanted to kind of point out what that percentage looks like. And as you can see on the next 2 pages, those are all of the projects, the category, the budgets, and the actual expenditures. Is there
Okay,
any?
but yeah, what I was interested in talking about, not the specific ones individually, because we're not going to micromanage how this money is spent. I'm really
Right.
interested in that summary chart. If we can go back to the summary chart. Jackie, you and I can show you how to do this when we get offline. You and I can get together and I can show you how to make it, bigger. But right now, this is everybody see the summary chart. That's the important thing. Okay.
yes,
And this question was asked not only from the perspective of where are we at this moment, because we're doing pretty well in spending the money and the projects are getting done at a reasonable clip. But we asked it in relationship to, there were a number of additional projects that were added to the consent order after the consent order was signed. It was about 5 projects that were very expensive projects. These, are they or not included in this summary? Do you know, Anisha?
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the projects off the top of my head. I can tell you, I know that redundant project is in there. Without knowing the title of the projects off the top of my head, I'm sorry, Chairman Mano, I can't answer that question specifically, but I do believe they are included in there, if my memory serves me correctly.
Okay, well, can we get 100% clarification on that? Because the question was asked in the context of, we have the first $200 million bond, okay?
Right.
Then the consent order was amended to include some additional projects,
That's
which
correct.
may or may not be covered by the original, probably not covered by the original 200,000. And I believe it was Roosevelt who asked the question of, well, then when are we going to go for the next 200 million? Okay.
Right.
And so that was the context within which we asked the question to see the running total of how many projects have been, done and how many are left to go, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just seeing this summary of how much money we've spent, which is excellent because it's the first time I've seen it in such a nice, clear way. But the question was asked in the context of, well, where do we go from here in terms of how much more money we need? And what is the timing of the more money? So that would be my comment on this. And the only other comment I have on this is the I&I. If you look at the I&I line, all right, the total budget for I&I was around 31 million. We've only spent 12 million. And we still have another 2 million encumbered and 16 million to go. Is there any reason why that portion is going not as quickly as you would hope it would go, given the bang for the buck you get on I&I?
Hey, Marilyn, I can answer that.
Thank you, Omar.
So I&I, we have the 6 basins. These are the 6 basins for the consent order. All the work that was planned to be part of the consent order has been 100% completed. There is still another 7 or 8 million left to finish all those basins. That not the whole basin was part of the consent order. Okay, we're done with our part. Now, these numbers here seem a little low to me. I don't know, Kim, if this shown as December 28th, how accurate are those numbers? I would expect that number to be a little higher.
Omar, these are only the bond dollars. This is not the entire CIP.
No, I know, but
Okay.
the 6 basins on the consent order are the $31 million that you're looking at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you say that that $31 million, the 6 basins are actually completed?
They are, as per the consent order. The parts of each basin that we had to do for the consent order have been completed 100%.
So
Now-
that either means we didn't need $31 million and we have more money
do.
left to do the
We
next
do.
bunch?
We do to finish all complete 6 basins. But as part of the consent order, we didn't need to finish the whole basin. It was just sections of.
I got you. I understand.
So whatever is left is not a huge priority, but that's the money that is left to finish the 6 basins of the consent order. But still, that number of 12 million plus 2, 14, that sounds low, unless there is a bunch of invoices that haven't been put in the system yet, which could be the case, because in the last month or two, we were trying to get as much work as possible to finish the part of the consent order that we needed to complete.
And if I can add, Chairman Mamano, oftentimes when it comes to the invoice processing, those pay apps, they will come in from the contractors, and then the project managers, they have to review them. Sometimes there's a lot of back and forth in order to get that pay app approved and processed. It can sometimes take months.
That's perfectly reasonable. I'm a treasurer of my condo. I know how that works. Can I assume that this information is easily updated? You don't have to go and do a whole nother process?
This is right out of phase. this is coming right out of the financial system.
Okay, so can we at the next meeting have an update that might capture all of the work that was done in the end of this year?
As
It's
long
probably
as
not a
those
bad, yeah, it's probably not a bad idea to keep, we don't need the details, but the summary. If we could keep in front of ourselves a summary, a running summary, so we could see how this is going, that would be very helpful. Don't you think, guys and gals?
Yes.
Okay.
Then
All
Chair-
right, so this is,
Chair?
yes, Peter.
So just to piggyback on what you were saying and go further, the other thing that the ITF is sort of charged with doing is looking at the expenditure going into the future. And the city has an expenditure plan based upon a certain bottom line number. And at the last meeting, we had Hazen Sawyer giving us a presentation on high risk infrastructure. And, you know, the question becomes, is that going to affect the ultimate bottom line of what's got to be spent? And in turn, does that affect the way the funding has been worked out with respect to the water sewer charges at the individual level? So that's not quite this spreadsheet, but that's the big picture that we need to be looking out for.
Okay, well, Hazen and Sawyer is on the line, is on the meeting today, and maybe we can ask them that question when they make their presentation. So this was the first important piece of information on the agenda that we asked for the information. They provided it. Again, I appreciate everybody working so hard over the holidays to do this. And I think this would be a very good piece of information to keep updated and keep in front of us so that as we go forward, we know what progress we've made and what additional things need to be done. I understand that we have some members of the public who have signed up to speak on item 6. And since this is out of line, perhaps we should ask the members of the public if they have any comments. Anisha, do you have anybody who wants to speak on item number 6?
Pauline
Pauline, I'm sorry.
signed up.
We had
Pauline,
no
you can go
one that
to
signed up
item number 2, 6.2.
We had no one that signed up before the meeting, but let me see if anyone signed up since the meeting has started.
Can you go ahead to 6.2 so we can talk about the fire hydrant?
Yes, please, yes, Peter?
Yeah. I do have a specific question, and I was pleased to see the large redundant north and south force mains on there and the high level of expenditure, but why are they listed under the category of water main?
You're looking at the detail?
Yes, if you go to the second column, it has category.
Mm-hmm.
And very last page of the spreadsheet, it starts with those two large redundant.
Oh, that's a mistake. Thank you for catching that for me. That should be sewer force main.
Hey, Pauline, can you load that up? I wanna see what Peter is talking about.
He's
It's
talking
just-
about the financial spreadsheet.
It's just a bookkeeping issue, I think.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know, but I know that some of these funds can come. It might be the fund that is coming from. I'm not sure.
No, we did the categories, Omar. It's just in the wrong category.
Okay.
We worked on that, myself, Kim, and Shannon.
Okay.
Okay, actually, someone did sign up to speak on this item. Paul Chetto,
Okay, can we let Paul into the meeting?
moderator, his number begins with 917.
Thank you, Peter, for that correction.
It proves I can read the small print.
You got that, Jackie? All right, Paul is.
Good bragging, Peter.
Phone number ending in 1754. Please unmute yourself.
Star 6.
Star 6.
I'm unmuted. Thank you. Thank you. Madam Chair, can you hear me?
I certainly can. Happy New Year, Paul.
Happy New Year to you, and thank you to everybody on the task force for your service. Couple of things now that you've moved this to the front. We're still unable to watch the presentation by Anisha from October. which was the presentation on the $200 million bond. So I did send another email yesterday to the city clerk to ask if you could reload that. But I want to follow on to what you and Peter have been asking and just word it slightly differently. We have been asking in the public since the budget meetings in 2016 for the totality of the cost of the fixes. And I get that there was an effort in October to present the $200 million. But as you are well aware, there are projects that are partially funded by the $200 million first tranche bond, and there are projects, the same projects, that are also funded in multiple places in the CIP. And what we want is the totality of a project. Pick any project. If you want to go to the force main projects or the phase 1 projects from the consent order, we have repeatedly shown that the city commission gavel has dropped and projects have cost 48% more than we were told. So then Raj is appointed as the director of public works. Very happy about that because he's transparent. So then he says to us for the first time ever that the Reese report, which was presented to us as a Cadillac plan, wasn't the Cadillac plan. It was a planning document, and that we should anticipate in the public, members of the public, taxpayers should anticipate it's going to cost more money. So now we've seen that it's going to cost more money. So it's nice that we now have part 1, which is how much the projects cost out of the bond, but that's not how much the projects cost. There are, so for example, just so you know, the city of Fort Lauderdale filed a document to, it was a Hazen and Sawyer report on July 21st, 2020, and that was the updated cost estimates for all the projects in the consent order. So when you look at those costs and you compare them to what we can partially see from Anisha's presentation in October, you can see how much more the projects cost in totality. So it's wonderful that we're sort of getting the transparency on the bond, but we really need every project in the consent order. What is the total amount? Because getting back to what you and Peter have said for the last 2 meetings, this is going to change the budgeting in the city of Fort Lauderdale. It's going to change the hierarchy of need in the city of Fort Lauderdale budgets, because if you have $60 million that you identified in the $200 million bond that couldn't be spent on the projects that were a top priority, we've now kicked them out because we've had emergency fixes. So now what are you going to do with those top priority $60 million worth of projects that were a top priority? And by the way, the majority of those top priority projects were on the CIP for years and years and years. So to say that they're a top priority is an understatement. So it changes the entire dynamic. So thank you for the transparency. Please, can you get the infrastructure task force meeting from October published so that we can actually watch Anisha's full presentation on the bond? And then please, can you provide the totality of the projects, not all of them, but I mean, the consent order ones would be a good start where we can see. Thank you very, very much.
Hi, Paul. This is Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else to speak on this item?
Hi, Paul. This is Pauline.
Yes.
We are aware that the video is pausing in the middle of the presentation, and our webmaster is actually working on correcting that now.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
And
Okay.
Chairman Mamano, we can definitely provide the total cost for consent projects, which would be an inclusive of any enterprise funds as well as bond costs for those particular projects. That's not a problem.
That's great. Then let's do that. Okay.
No problem.
So
We'll separate.
We'll do
them.
that for the next meeting.
Sure thing.
All right. Excellent. So the second item on the information, second information item, who's going to do that?
We have Rick Johnson on, and he can definitely talk a little bit about this. But during the break, we've had several conversations with Mr. Zeltman on this item. And so in the presentation, we have 2 dashboards. That's just a summary of some of the information that we provide or we have to monitor the inspections. So you can see this. And so, Rick, can you go through what we have and help everyone understand what they're looking at?
Sure, no problem. Can I first give a quick little history and Happy New Year to everybody
Sure.
as well?
Absolutely.
So we started the written fire hydrant maintenance program back in May of 2017. We've got about 6,168 hydrants in the system at that time. And basically we have 3 crews. We've divided the city into 3 different sections, and each crew is dedicated to try to maintain about 2,000 hydrants in their section each year. So in the first year, from May to December, we were actually able to inspect and preventive maintenance and perform preventive maintenance on about 35% or over 2,000 of those hydrants. In 2018, the very first year we had full staff and full vehicles, we were able to maintain 100% of all 6,000 hydrants. So the dashboard that you're looking at, you can see this is the final for the end of the year. We actually perform maintenance on 6,205 hydrants. That's up in the top left corner where it shows 100%. The map that you see with all the bright green dots, that's a visual showing you exactly where all the hydrants are located and which ones we perform preventive maintenance on. The 119 that you see, that's actually showing you how many hydrants we were able to maintain that particular month, which was December. And then down on the left, you'll see we have averages for the PSI, or the pressure in the distribution system, measured at each hydrant, and also the average flow measured from each hydrant. And in this particular case, you'll see the flow was over 1,000 gallons from each hydrant. We also track hydrants that don't meet specs, those that are under 50 PSI, and those that don't flow. In this particular case, the ones that flowed less than 500 gallons per minute. So then we go back and we look at those hydrants to see if it's a local problem with the hydrant or if it's a more systemic problem with the distribution system that could result in a CIP project to replace or upgrade a water main in that area. Now, in 2019, to follow up, we also did almost 100%, 99.1%. And that number was slightly different because in our second go through of the GIS database, we were able to add hydrants and subtract some hydrants. We had some duplicates in there. And of course, with development, we're constantly changing the number of hydrants in the system. So this year, 2020, we did have some significant challenges. Number one was COVID and staffing. We had a couple of months where we didn't really work at full capacity. And we also had the consent order for water, which required maintenance of the valves in the system. So we had to kind of borrow from our hydrant program to the valve program. And this year we've had a significant reduction in hydrant maintenance down to about 40%.
Next page, Pauline.
Say that again?
I was telling Pauline, next page.
Oh, okay. So this year we've received in December 2 additional vehicles to do valve maintenance. So we're no longer going to be borrowing staff from the hydrant program. So in 2021, we should be back to full capacity. We've also added about 700 hydrants to our system just in doing the maintenance, where we've identified hydrants that were not located in GIS. So we've added to our system. When we do the maintenance, we capture field data, the brand of the hydrant, location, whether or not the hydrant works, obviously, how many turns it takes to open the hydrant, the flow rate in gallons per minute, static pressure, that is the pressure that's there at that hydrant at any particular time of the day. Obviously, we look for leaks and we maintain the hydrant, such as if it needs to be greased or painted, or the packing on the valves need to be changed or adjusted. Now, as far as there's been a lot of questions about flow testing for fire prevention. That is not the same as what we do when we do PM. When we do PM, we only flow 1 hydrant and we get that flow rate and we get that static pressure. A fire flow test is something that's done for a developer or contractor. They order it and we go out there and we flow more than 1 hydrant. You take the subject property and you take hydrants on either side of that subject property. You open those hydrants up and flow them, and you measure the pressure at at the subject property to see if the pressures can be maintained above the 20 PSI. That's a different test than what we do when we do maintenance. Now that can also indicate, obviously, if you can't have proper adequate fire flow protection, that the mains could be undersized, or there could be a problem such as tuberculation in the main. And we'll address that too. The program that you saw, you haven't actually seen the written program. I know Anisha has a copy of it, but it was based on all the National Fire Protection Association documents, AWWA Manual 17, and the Florida Statute, Chapter 633 for Fire Prevention and Control. Any questions?
Yeah, great. I have a question, but I'll defer to anybody else who wants to chime in first. Charlie? Charlie,
I'm
did you have
good.
a question?
I didn't have any
Okay.
question.
Chair?
Yes, Ralph.
Hi. First, I want to thank Rick for his presentation, and we had a conversation last week. And as he pointed out, which I think is important for the rest of the members to understand, is there's a difference between a static pressure test and a dynamic test. Basically, the 50 PSI is on the static end of for the fire hydrant, and the dynamic is typically for a single family residential. It would be a fire test where you open up the fire hydrant to see if you can achieve, in the case for single family, 500 gallons per minute with a residual pressure of at least 20 PSI. And all this information is important because hopefully most cities and counties and utility companies will develop a grid system where they develop basically a system where they can go in at any place, any fire hydrant, and for a particular peak hour or maximum day, and determine the flow capability based on these based on the flow tests, fire hydrant flow tests. There's a big difference with a static pressure and then a pressure such as when the fire hydrants are flowing.
Good, how you doing?
So again, just like the information that I had sent through Pauline to you all about the tuberculated pipe, you'll discover in the dynamic testing such things as a tuberculated pipe where there's a lot of rust that has accumulated inside that restricts the flow and also causes a destruction of the laminar flow to a more turbulent flow with the roughness and the jagged edges that photo sent. Thanks to Rick on providing that, because that's an important part of the older cast iron pipe system. But that's the only thing I wanted to address on was the difference in the static and dynamic flow testing of fire hydrants.
Thank you, Ralph. Rick, thank you for the presentation. I take away three questions or pieces of information. One was you found 700 fire hydrants that we didn't know we had. So this is like a miracle. And I think, it's the blessing of GIS that now that you can really actually locate them and put them on a map. It's not just some file folder down in the basement someplace. It's really a digitized map, and you can keep it up to date and it's more accurate. So that's a good thing. And you also said that prior to 2017 or something about that, this started in 2017. What did we do before 2017?
We always did hydrant maintenance, but we didn't have a written plan, and we didn't capture the data and import it directly into GIS on a daily basis, which we do now. So we had a lot of paper documents that Yeah, and you know what happens with paper documents? They get filed away and nobody ever sees them. Now with GIS and the data being uploaded into GIS every day, we can pull up-to-date reports to tell us how we're doing and let us know which hydrants are out of service or underflowing. So it's much more robust system than we did in the past.
Okay, well, I think this is like a good news story that I think a lot of people would be interested in hearing, that, you know, in just the last 3 or 4 years, we've made a tremendous leap in terms of our maintenance. And also the other item that I thought was really important was you're telling me that now we're not borrowing these fire hydrant guys anymore to do valve maintenance. We have an actual crew to do valve maintenance. So I think it's
yeah, we
yeah,
have
go on.
actually four crews to do valve maintenance and the 3 crews to do hydrant maintenance. We only have, you know, I only say only 6,897 hydrants. That's still quite a lot, but we have over 12,000 distribution system valves. And the one thing about maintaining hydrants is that, you know, when you think about it, hydrants are on the side of the road. We don't have to block traffic. We don't have to do a lot of MOT setup to get in and do hydrant maintenance. But with valves, most of the valve boxes are located actually in the roadway. So we need more staff. It takes longer to do the valve exercising. And we just now in December received the 2 additional vehicles that we ordered back in January of last year, 2020. So we are now nearly full staff and we have all the resources we need. There's just one more vacant position that we need to fill, and we'll have complete crews to do valve maintenance on the 12,000 valves. And also just so you know, each hydrant also has its own isolation valve. So those hydrant guys are actually also testing and maintaining 6,000 valves for isolating those hydrants.
Right. So
Okay.
this is a good news story that I think a lot of people would be happy to hear about, that, you know, we've made a great leap forward in just the last 3 years on these 2 issues, the water valves and the fire hydrant maintenance. You know, I go to a lot of meetings and they say, well, nobody's doing anything. That's not true. You know, you need to do a better job. We all need to do a better job of making sure that people understand the progress that's been made, as well as, you know, understanding what other problems remain that we have to address. So I want to thank you again, Rick. And
Can I comment
I'm
on
glad
this?
we got you here so that you don't have to stay all day to give us this good news.
Could
Does
I
anybody
comment?
else have any questions for Rick?
This is Charlie. Can I comment?
Certainly.
The average flow is at 1,000 gallons per minute on the latest report that I'm looking at. I think it's the latest one. It shows the dates on here of
It may not be
December.
the latest one, but yes, but that's the average flow for all the hydrants that were flowed.
And there were 10 with less than 250 gallons per minute.
Correct.
And you've got static pressure that's 50% more than the 50 pounds that is the minimum.
The static pressure, yeah. The thing about pressure is that it varies from the time of day and how many pumps they have on the water plants. So I don't put a lot of weight on the static pressure. Also in the days when the cruise ships were filling, you can see localized pressures down near Port Everglades drop off, you know, significantly. So we just use it as a kind of a guide to go in and determine whether or not we have to do a more thorough inspection of that area.
Right. But I mean, my general impression of what you have here is that we got great, we don't have issues with our fire hydrant system in terms of we've got great pressure, we've got great flows. The flows in many cases are double the 500 gallons per minute. That's optimum.
Yeah, we've
so
used
great.
We've already identified a lot of areas, and we developed the CIPs on areas that have poor flow, so that we can get in there and upgrade those water mains.
Do you have a list of areas where you feel that there's a need for? Is it area specific that you need to make improvements, or could it be just that the one or two are not optimally operating?
It could be, you know, but when we go in there, we can look at it for tuberculation. When we do what we call coupon testing of a pipe, if we have a break, which this is the only benefit of a break is you can actually see what the inside of your pipe looks like. But sometimes when we don't have breaks, we'll actually go in and cut a pipe just to see what it looks like inside, to see if we're suffering in a particular area. Because a lot of things can restrict flow. It could be tuberculation, it could be a closed valve, it could be a couple of closed valves or valves that are broken and we're not sure what position they're in. So all of this data though gives us it's just a tool to go in and do further, deeper investigation in the areas. But any area that we know is already a low flow, we've already addressed it with a CIP project.
Good, excellent. Okay, Ralph? And then
Yes,
we'll move on.
I wanted, one of my original questions was that with the Reese engineering report, they had on pages, I guess, 219 through 220 something, showing where they apparently took fire hydrant flow tests and determined there were, in this report, this information was gathered back in 2015. And showed quite a lot of the city areas or the fire hydrants were deficient. So what Rick is saying is there has been a lot of maintenance and improvement in these systems to improve the firefighting capability is what I'm hearing. And but I would also like to have sort of similar to what the Reese report had, would be like a map showing some of the fire hydrants that are deficient in meeting the ISO or other fire hydrant requirements by the regulatory agencies to meet the like for residential 500, for commercial it could be up to 1,500 gallons per minute in there. If there is a map, that would be great. If there isn't a map, probably the city should generate one such so that we can have a sort of a target to look at to make sure that those areas are brought up to meeting the, at least the minimum requirements.
And Ralph, we have the data. We have the data. Generating a map is not that difficult, so we can do that.
Well,
Great.
the thing is, though, Mr. Zeltman had him to speak with the fire department and the person that maintains them, and he was able to provide him the information that, based on our ISO testing, the results of the last one shows that we don't have any in that particular situation, and that's why we had excellent ratings on our ISO test.
Anisha, let me correct you on that. I never did receive any information, and that's why I went ahead and I called Rick to find out if he had any information. The captain, the captain that I spoke with Bruce, he was indicating that the Public Works does this work and that the information generated would be from Public Works.
And let me just clarify too. When we do the ISO reports, the ISO forms only really ask us how many hydrants have been maintained. That's the biggest key thing. But they do ask also, if anything, if we had any issues with hydrants. But the big number that they really look for in the ISO report is how many hydrants have been maintained in your system. Okay. That particular, over the last 3 years.
Okay.
Hazen and Sawyer on the water model, they're working on that. I don't know if you want to jump in, Patricia, and explain a little bit about that.
I don't actually. I mean, on what is she going to be explaining on hydrants?
Well, no, it's just that the water model is going to develop the map exactly that Mr. Zeltman was asking for current and future. So anything that would need to be upgraded, that would be on that map for the future. Right. And we're using the data that Rick is coming up with to calibrate the model. So it'll all be like, match exactly what's happening in real time right now.
Right. Okay. But I think what Mr. Zeltman was asking for is a map to show those that are deficient. And based on the information that I got from Captain Schultz, Bruce, and what we've discussed, there are none that are deficient based on AWWS standards right now. So that there would be nothing to reflect on a map based on the current data that we have. I guess that's what I'm just trying to provide, Mr. Zeltman.
Okay.
Okay, okay. Are you good, Ralph?
It's if that report based on a dynamic fire flow testing throughout and hopefully a modeling of that so that the system in its entirety could be shown that each zone developed will have that, will have the fire flow fighting capability. I mean, if that's what's being said, that's great news. But it's looking at the 2015 information. There's been a lot of work to correct all those deficient fire flow. When I say fire flow, dynamic fire flow capability to handle the different requirements for each zone. So if that be the case, fine. That's great news. But that's amazing to me if that's the case.
Well, since we started the program in 2017, we've gone through the entire number of hydrants at least twice, and we're on our trip to go through them for the third time. And that program does generate a lot of fire hydrant repairs and a lot of fire hydrant replacements. So that's data that I don't have at my fingertips right now. But we have done quite a few hydrant replacements. I know that you'll see very small precautionary boil water notices sometimes when we have to replace hydrants because we take one particular street out of service, but we're doing them on a regular basis, replacing hydrants that don't function properly.
Rick, if I may, if there's a possibility, and the areas that I'm more concerned with is the southeast corner of the city, water distribution areas, especially on the beach area. So with the two water treatment plants, Peel Dixie and the 5 Ash in concert, I would, it would be interesting to see what those pressures and flows are in the southeast quadrants of the city, because that would be the furthest distance away from the treatment plants, where pressures would be more likely to be marginal.
You're absolutely right. I look at SCADA, which provides me, I have 8 different pressure sensors throughout the city, and Harbor Beach has always been one of our indicator site, if you will, because it is the most susceptible to small changes in the system.
Okay.
Okie dokie. All right. So now we've got fire hydrants and water valves. Okay, next item on the agenda.
The capacity letter spreadsheet, Madam Chair,
Yes.
is going to be a part of the old business that Igor is going to go through. So if we could get the remainder of the information items, the date of last update of ERC is included in the document, and it shows. It's just a document to show when the ERCs were updated, which is May 1st of 2019. And it's a guidelines for the calculation of the sanitary sewer connection fees. And we will also have more conversation about those impact fee allocation as a part of the new business.
Fine, so we'll defer that. We'll do that when we have that discussion. Excellent.
And the last thing on the information list is the matrix used by Hazen and Sawyer to determine the risk. Pauline, if you can bring that development of risk matrix up, and I will pass the baton to Patricia.
Thank you. So I believe at the last meeting you were asking, how exactly did we come up with the risk scores for all the pipes that we looked at? And this is a 5-page document that kind of goes through that. So if you like, I'll go through the whole thing. Generally speaking, the way that risk is calculated for force mains or any kind of infrastructure in the ground pipelines is that you look at the likelihood of failure of a particular pipe, and you look at the consequence of failure of that particular pipe. So likelihood of failure has to do with things like how long has it been, how old is it, what kind of material is it, has it had breaks recently, what's the peak operating pressure, is it maintained regularly, and are there any external or internal physical factors that affect the asset and or the proximity to like saltwater intrusion. So those are the things that we looked at with regard to the likelihood of failure. Now, each one of these categories is weighted a little bit differently. And the way that we came up with the weighting, if you go to the next page, please. Can you go to page 2, Pauline, please? What we did is, so you can see that these are all not weighted equally. I think there's 7, so if you took 100 divided by 7, whatever number that is, they all have different weights. And the way we came up with these is that we sat down with a group of individuals from Public Works, and we did a pairwise comparison. And a pairwise comparison is used scientifically in scientific studies quite often. What you do is you take each one of these things and you ask somebody what's more important, urethane installation or the pipe material. What's more important, pipe material or pipe break history? And you take everybody's answers and you compile them and you take a look at them, and that's how we come up with a weighting for each of these particular items. Go to the next page, please. After we do the likelihood of failure, we also have to look at the consequence of failure. So say there's a small pipe that's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and if that breaks, and it's highly likely that it'll break, the consequence may be very low. So we use a combination of those two scores in order to look at the overall risk to the system. So consequence, we look at things like how big is the pipe? If it's a small pipe, the consequence of failure versus a 42-inch pipe, quite different, right? What's the proximity to the potable well fields? So if the pipe breaks and it's in a well field area, that's an issue. We look at the residential and essential services impacts. So if it's kind of in a residential neighborhood and there's no schools or city hall or police stations or hospitals or things like that, it may get a lower score. We look at system reliability. Is there a way to get around this pipe? Is there a redundant line that we can go through, or is there zero redundancy, and therefore it would be bad? We look at the financial impact to the utility. So obviously smaller lines are going to cost less to repair versus big lines are going to cost a lot to repair. And then we look at community impact. Is it a minor disruption because it's a smaller residential street and people can go around, or is it a major thoroughfare like a highway? Next page. Also, environmental compliance is another issue. Is it close to the water body, something like that? So then we did the same thing with the pairwise comparison to look at the weighting. So you can see from this list that environmental compliance and system reliability were the things that came from the United States. If you go to the next page, please. So then so now you have a score of 1 to 10 on each LOF and COF, and then they're weighted, and then you multiply those two numbers together, and then it puts you somewhere in this matrix. And so that's what we did for every single pipe in the city that was city owned. And obviously, if they had low numbers on risk, 1 through 4, it came out green, meaning maybe it's a line that we either didn't have to look at, maybe because it was new or had really good pipe material, to an area in the middle, and then obviously the higher risk portion. So we broke those then into groups. So we took all of the pipelines in the system, which was 110 miles. And of the 110, we found that 37 miles had no further assessment required because there was such a low likelihood of failure. And then there were another 9 miles that we didn't further assess because they were so high. So in other words, we didn't want to waste any money doing any kind of assessment. We just had to replace them. And then there were a group that were in phase 2 of the consent order already. So those got taken care of because we were already working on those. And then for the remainder of them, we were doing some additional testing to come up with just some refined risk score so we could prioritize them. And that's how we did what we did. Does anybody have any questions on
I was with you until the end. A part of it was a little garbled, but perhaps you could explain again. Everything that falls into the red, okay? These are your high-risk priority projects. You
Yes.
said some of them are already being taken care of because they were in the consent order, right?
Correct. Yes.
Some of them are being taken care of because they're in the CIP and we're using city money and fees to it.
Yes.
What's left? What is left to be done in the high priority category?
So we added to the consent order, we added about 7 miles of pipe to the consent order. So the consent order said, not only do you have to do these pipes that are in the list, but you have to do this force main condition assessment. And then if you need to add any or other pipes, you need to do that. So when we went through this exercise, we came up with an additional 7 or so miles of pipe that got added to your consent order. So your amended consent order has 7 more miles of pipe. And then what we did is we recommended a set of pipes to be added to your CIP. And that was 13 miles of pipe that needed to be added to your CIP. So not necessarily an imminent risk of failure, you know, mathematically and scientifically as best we could with the data that we had. So they weren't in an imminent risk of failure, but needed to be added to the CIP to do, you know, in the next 5 years. So, and then there was a number, the remainder of them, either they were very low risk, very low likelihood of failure, or just something to be monitored, you know, moving forward.
Okay, that didn't really answer my question. And my question is very simple. Of all the red, everything that's in red, all the miles that are in red, is there anything that has not been added to the consent order and we have money to fix, or has been added to the CIP and we will eventually get money to fix? Is there anything that we need to focus on in that red category that we have not got a plan for?
No, I don't believe there is.
Well,
I think
that's a
everything.
good thing.
Yeah.
That is a very good thing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So
I
Chair,
think it's a good thing. What do you think? Peter?
Chair.
Yes, Peter.
So I'm going to ask if Patricia can stick around for when we get to the agenda item on the moratorium, because I think some of this is relevant to that. Patricia, at the last meeting, you gave us a similar presentation, which was comparing the Reese report to your more current work. And that concluded that there were nearly 17 miles of force in a high risk category compared to only 3 miles in the Reese report. So again, ask the question again.
All right.
That 17 miles, has that all now found its way into the CIP or something comparable?
You have in your consent order, you now have approximately 22 miles of pipe in your CO, in your consent order now. And then there's another 13, like I said, another 13 miles that have been added to the CIP or recommended to be added to the CIP. So yes, I believe the answer to that question is yes.
So if it's in the CIP, it's possible in a worst case scenario that some of that total length would not be funded until year 5 of the CIP. I guess this is a question. And if so, then it wouldn't get constructed till more like 7 years from now. Would that be
right. Yes.
somewhat correct to say?
Yes.
So we could be going really many years, 5 to 8, with some of this high risk force main still in existence.
You have 20, you do have 22 miles of high risk force main, or you know, any on the higher side, right? So the highest risk to, you know, moving down a little bit till you get to the 22 miles. That is either in planning or in construction currently, and that will all be done by 2026.
So it's sort of what I said, 5 to 7 years, 5 to 8 years, I might have said. Okay, and then also on this process, Patricia, there is certainly a degree, would you agree? There's a degree, maybe even arguably a high degree of subjectivity to this, because you've got these factors that you have come up with, and then you weight those according to somewhat subjective process, and then you multiply the two weights together. So one just has to be aware of what's going into this analysis. That's all.
Correct. It's not a physically intrusive analysis. I mean, there is data with regard to breaks. We do know which kinds of pipes, tend to break and which kinds of pipes don't tend to break. For instance, the plastic pipe, the HDPE is going to be newer. It's, much less likely to break versus some of the older DIP. That's where we're seeing our breaks. So yes, absolutely. There's, with all the weighting and all those things, it is fairly subjective, but there is as best data as we can, behind that. We know where the saltwater intrusion is. We know, there's a lot of things that we do know that are factual, but we are adding those, we're factoring those things in, but yes, there is subjectivity to it, absolutely.
And I think, Chair, that we're going to discuss, I was going to bring up pump stations, but I think they're going to be included in the capacity letter spreadsheet that we're going to discuss under item 3. So I'll leave any comments for there.
Thank you, Peter. And just to follow on what you were saying, Patricia, the extra miles that were added to the consent order because of the work that was done on this these studies, how many millions of dollars did it add to the total amount of money? And do we have that money in the consent order, or is this all going to have to be CIP money or another consent order? Again, I'm trying to get to the additional costs of those things that were added to the consent order after it was signed, and then additional studies were done and additional items were identified. Trying to get a handle on those costs.
I agree. So the projects that were added to the consent order, 7.1 miles, total about $35 million. And I'm looking at it now, 2 of them are already constructed. And 2, actually the other 3, so there's 5 altogether. 2 are 100% constructed. 1 is 70% complete, maybe a little bit higher now. 1 is about 50% complete, again, maybe a little bit higher now. And then the last one is the redundant force main in the north. So that big force main that we're doing from north to south, it's the north half. And that right now is probably about 40 or 50% complete. So they all have P numbers, so they're all funded. I'm not sure exactly how they're funded. I'd have to leave that up to Public Works to answer, but they are all either completed or in construction right now, the additional projects.
Okay, so they were not things that we had not been working on anyway. They were just added to the consent order. We were working on them, but now they've been added to the consent order and they have to be finished by a certain date. Is that what this is?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so some of the money was already in the consent order for some of them?
And some was
Okay.
already in the CIP. That's why I couldn't tell you definitively if it was all in the consent order or not.
I got you. I'm understanding now. All right. Anybody have any other questions for Patricia? If not, we will get back to the regular agenda. Was anybody else from the public wishing to speak on item number 6? Or did we get everybody in?
Pauline, could you verify, please?
No one else.
I comment on the
Okay.
DRC list.
Yeah, we're going to move on to that right. Oh, on the
Okay.
DRC list. Yeah, we're going to move on to that right now.
Okay.
Okay, let's go back to the agenda. And item number 2 is general discussion and comments by committee members. I only have one comment, and I'll make this quick because we have a big agenda to continue with. If you will notice on the agenda, we added under old business an item 1 called continued discussion on developing a moratorium. This was a suggestion by Peter Partington, and I thought it was a really good one. I think we should actually have this as an agenda item every meeting going forward. And the reason I'm saying this is because we have, in addition to our general charge of looking at infrastructure and funding and things like that, we have a very specific charge from the commission to talk about whether or not a moratorium is necessary. And at some point, we're going to have to take a position on that. And I think that if we don't keep that in the forefront of our discussion, we could just sort of drift off into and lose the focus on that. Because at some point, whether it's 6 months from now or whatever, we're going to have to answer that question. Yes, no, maybe, here's an alternative. So I think if we keep that focus in our discussions, everything we're talking about should be focused on how are we going to answer that question. I think that would be a sort of like a galvanizing thing for us to keep that in mind. If anybody,
So I don't
Yeah.
understand totally that process.
Okay.
So in other words, every month we're going to decide if we want to have a moratorium?
No, every month we're going to decide, do we have enough information to put forward a recommendation? We're not necessarily have a recommendation or not have a recommendation, but at some point we're going to have to write something. They're going to ask us, they're going to say, you've been meeting for 6 months. What have you got to say on this subject matter, that this specific task that we gave you? So if we don't keep that in the sort of like the front of our minds, we will get 6 months down the line and we won't have an answer to the question. And I think that if we keep it in the forefront of our minds, then we can keep asking the questions necessary to get to a response. That was, I just thought, Peter had an excellent suggestion there. I'm open to, the discussion with everybody else on this, because I just feel at some point we're going to have to say something about this. And if we don't keep that.
Yeah, I think so too, but I
minds.
don't know that you should keep kicking the can. I guess you don't have enough information. Okay.
Oh, no, actually, I see where you're coming from, Jackie. I don't see it as kicking the can. What I see it as keeping the can right in front of us so that we don't kick it and we don't just ignore it. And we don't go 6 months and still not have an answer to the question. That was where I was coming from. I'd be happy to, how does everybody else feel about this?
Well, my question would be, does anybody feel like there is a case for a moratorium? I don't see one now.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from, Peter.
So the first thing is that the reso that set this current iteration up of the ITF is pretty specific, that they want us to look at the possibility of a moratorium, which is why I agree with you, Chair, that we need to keep a focus on it. I would remind people that our predecessor group, almost exactly 2 years ago, did a report to the Commission, largely about financing at that time, but they did report to the Commission, and I think we're working towards a short letter report to the City Commission on the subject of a moratorium. I'm prepared to summarize. I read the minutes of when we had Dwayne Spence in front of us talking about the legalities of a moratorium, and I can I can summarize what he said and summarize what I think the possibilities might be, strengths and weaknesses. If Chair, you'd like me to do that, or I'm happy to let other people weigh in.
Well, I appreciate your offer. If you remember, David Oshansky provided that service for us the last time when, we needed somebody to put the words to paper. If you don't put the words to paper, then you don't have a document for us to debate and talk about. I want to go back to Charlie a minute, okay? If let's just say, for instance, what would you give to the city commission to say that our position, let's just say hypothetically, the position of the the committee is that we do not need a moratorium. But then we have to tell them why, based on what. So what
Well,
yeah.
I
what would you
haven't been
put?
sitting on this board as long as a lot of other people, but what I've gotten so far, and based on my knowledge of infrastructure as a builder and property owner for the last 25 years, is that there's 3 areas of concern: the fire main system, the water main system, and the sewer system. The fire main system, I haven't seen anything that would cause me to say that there's not enough capacity and there's not enough operable fire hydrants that would anywhere come close to causing issues in this city.
Okay.
And especially when you consider the number of fires that we have. You know, it's not like we're going to have 50 fires happen at one time. You know, the number of fires we have in a year, or I don't know. I mean, so if you have one major building catch on fire and the sprinklers went off, it'd be a first time in a decade. So that's the fire side. The water side, I see the same thing. I don't see a capacity issue, and I see the pipes that are at risk that are being replaced, and I don't see that adding more development and in actuality approving development that's going to come online maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the road is going to really make any difference in our water system and our ability to supply water to the new buildings. And then my knowledge of what I've seen so far on the sewer side is that we have capacity, that increasing usage is not going to impact whether these pipes break or not because they're pressurized. And the ones that are most at risk, we're aggressively spending hundreds of millions of dollars to fix. So I don't see how a moratorium would change any of this. And I don't see how a moratorium would make this system less at risk or more at risk. I mean, and that's my take. And obviously there's other board members that may feel differently, but that's what I've gotten so far.
I think that's a very good summary. And I think, Peter, if you could think of putting your thoughts together on those 3 areas, unless you have other areas you want to add. Peter.
Well, I think Charlie has summarized the capacity issues correctly, but what the commission was hearing from the public was something along the lines of, well, there may be capacity, but you're putting extra flow into pipes that keep breaking, in so many words. And where I see the possibility of a moratorium, I'm not saying a likelihood, is along the lines of, in the process that evaluates new developments for their impact on the various systems, that there should be explicit consideration of the capacity, there should be explicit consideration of the condition of the pipes, etc., that they're going into. And what D. Wayne said was, just picking, cherry picking from what he said in the minutes a couple of meetings ago, you can do a moratorium if you are in the process of, or for the purpose of evaluating the process by which you evaluate development's impacts on your system. So it wouldn't be possible to do it for a long period of time, but arguably you could say we're going to do a moratorium while we revisit exactly how we evaluate the impact of developments, including the capacity, including the condition of that infrastructure. So there's one avenue by which we possibly might be able to recommend to the Commission, if so minded, that a moratorium could be enacted for a short period of time. And maybe it's a worthwhile exercise to look in detail and bringing in people like Patricia, who now has a fairly detailed look at a lot of our infrastructure, and seeing if some element of condition can be incorporated into the process.
Could I ask a question on that?
And then,
Yes.
and then Jackie.
So your analysis is whether or not we could recommend a moratorium, but I think where the logic chain breaks a little bit is that if there's a moratorium, the moratorium is on projects that are approved, correct? That's the point where you stop it.
I'm not sure about that.
Do you think you could stop issuing permits?
That's what a moratorium is.
Well, there's different permits. There's the site plan approval process, and there's the actual permitting process. But what I think would square the box or square the circle would be for somebody to opine on these pipes that are at risk, the timeframes to deal with them versus the timeframes that this extra usage could actually come online. So in other words, if the city instituted a moratorium tomorrow, how long until that actually had an impact on the amount of additional flow that was added to the system? To say nothing of whether adding that flow actually makes a difference. Especially, and personally, the line that I care about the most is the 42-inch line that runs north to south. That's the monster. That's the one I care about the most, and I want to know when it's going to be done. Jerry.
I'm sorry, Jerry. Jerry, can Jackie first? Yes.
In our discussion at the last meeting, we talked about capacity and condition. And didn't someone from staff say that, well, that's not how we do it or how we issue these letters? We don't, so why don't we focus on trying to get staff to implement that as a condition for these approvals versus if a moratorium wouldn't be appropriate, which I don't know, yes or no. I think what definitely is appropriate that these capacity letters have condition in them too, and both have to be weighted before they give approval.
But Jackie, it's a nebulous concept, because if you're saying in theory we're going to put more effluent into these pipes so that if they break, there's more effluent that's going to leak. There's no way to analyze that. How do you to start with? I don't know that it's a valid logic chain to start with. I don't even know if that
I guess
makes
what
sense.
I'm thinking of, Charlie, is that all these projects that come before planning and zoning, they have a capacity letter, but they don't have the condition isn't weighted. And that's
it is. It is, because they'll tell you.
Hold on. That's where the
gotta upgrade
frustration is.
And all kinds of stuff.
That's where the frustration is in the community, members of the planning and zoning board, et cetera, et cetera.
I didn't mean for this discussion to bleed over into the next discussion. And that's where we should have this discussion. Jerry, do you want to say something about the concept of keeping this forefront in our mind? Because at some point we have to make a statement.
Yeah, no, I was headed down the conditional analysis.
Okay.
Path.
All right. So then if
nobody, is a little bit more concrete than should be. But if that's in the next topic, then it's in the next topic. But it combines Jackie's thought with Peter's.
Okay.
Is there any written document?
Right. Is there any other general discussion before we get into the main event, which is the continued discussion of the capacity letters?
The main event.
That's the main event.
Me. Do you know what the main event is? It's the
Where's
World
the bracelet?
Series.
Where's the bracelet?
Exactly.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Sports fans, I'm so sorry. Okay, let's move on then. And let's go to somebody put up the capacity letters on the screen? Because that was the discussion that we're going to be having.
Pauline, if you can put that up, and if you do, bring it up to like 200 to 300% viewing, because it is a lot of data and it is very hard to read unless you open it up to 200 to 300%. While she's bringing it up, I'll mention that Igor is going to walk you through the capacity letter process. He has a lot of information. What was requested in the last meeting is that we actually provide you with the full picture of all of those requests. And so what you've received is a myriad of information that goes all the way back to, I believe it was like 2012, 15 or something like that, but it goes back quite a bit of what all the requests since they started logging these on this spreadsheet. So that's what Igor is going to walk you through, going through the different captions of the different columns. And then he's going to walk you through a specific project from the beginning to the end, so you understand exactly what is there. Igor, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Igor.
Here.
You guys need that a little bit bigger, or is that fine?
That's, I think,
maybe just a little bit bigger.
A little bit? I'd say a lot.
Oh,
Make it a
okay.
lot bigger.
This one is very small.
Yeah, it is.
yeah, just a it's a large table. It's got a lot of data in it. So I apologize. It's just really hard to show everything at the same time.
And we talked about, do we exclude something, but the request was for everything. And so in full transparency, we provided you with everything.
Okay. Igor, could you just go column by column and explain what's in each column? So then we can have an intelligent discussion about anything that we find strange.
That's exactly what we want to do. Go ahead, Igor.
Okay. Let me do a quick explanation first now.
Good.
What we have here is basically three tables. The middle table is basically more of a raw data. Is just a capacity log that's been maintained since we started logging projects, which goes back to, I guess, 2014, 2015, and they sorted by DRC case number. So if you're going to look at the project and what the stage it's on, you can look at the DRC case, and it's got about 360 plus projects in there. And the first table, and that's why is it the first table? Because that's a table we mainly work with. That's all the same projects sorted by pump station basins. Okay, I'll take my words back. There's a little bit less projects in there. There's about 200 and something projects in there because that table does not include projects that's been completed and issued a certificate of occupancy, because once certificate of occupancy is issued, it goes off that list. That's why if you look at the column certificate of occupancy in this table number 1, you won't see anything. Because
Pauline, could you move that chart over so we can see the other columns?
Oh, good.
Igor,
I thought I was
if I
the
could
only
help,
one.
Igor, if you could please just walk them from the very first column.
Let's go from the very first. I don't want
everyone understands exactly what you have here.
Step by step from step 1.
Thank you.
Yeah, the first column, you have a DRC case number, which is, assigned, it used to be assigned manually, now it's assigned by the system. And then the date when they had a DRC review, DRC date, the column number 2. That's when the project was officially reviewed by DRC. The next one is the project name, which is pretty much self-explanatory, address. And we also include a quick description of whatever it is. Is that a hotel, or is that affordable housing, or is that a 5 condos, or a marina? And the next one is water sewer capacity letter issue date. It's when we actually complete our capacity evaluation and issue a capacity letter to the applicant. And then the process continues and the project goes into final DRC approval. Then that's how we do the date tracking, goes to final DRC approval. And then they apply for a building permit. The next column reflects when the application was filed for construction permit. And the next one, when the permit's been issued. So going further, we're going into the actual flows. The next column in green that we have, it's allocated million gallons per day. It's an allocated flow. Then we have pump station basin, which
we put where the project belongs geographically in the area and which pump station basin it's located in. And here, the next column, point of connection. This is a number for, it's a manhole ID number. Every manhole in the city has an ID number, and that's the nearest upstream manhole to a point of connection for the sewer lateral, or for the sewer for that particular project. Then next column is the notes, if there's anything in particular we want to mention in there. And the last three are the probably most important ones for us for the evaluation, which is the water demand, where one ERC equals 300 gallons per day at the maximum day and 230.77 at an average day. And the sewer demand is based on 175 gallons per day per ERC. And the committed sewer demand, because water demand equals committed water demand, sewer, they're a little bit different because of the difference between 300 and 175. And the last column summarizes committed sewer demand per each pump station. So when we do the evaluation, we look at this number, and this is what we call the committed flow. And that's one of the three flows we take into consideration. We take into consideration the actual flow, existing flow. Then we add the committed flow, the flow which is not yet there, but we made a commitment to provide the capacity for that flow. And then the flow for the project. So this is one of our three components.
Igor, you were going to walk them through a particular project, right?
Well, before we get
sure,
to that,
yes.
can we ask questions? Before we get to that, can we ask questions about this?
Absolutely.
Please? Thank you. A couple of questions. Committed sewer demand by pump station, okay? How is that different from committed sewer demand from the treatment plant? I'm not an engineer. I understand you got to get it to the pump station, you got to pump it out, and you got to get it to the sewage treatment plant. But every time we talk about capacity, we talk about the treatment plant. So help me to understand what this means, committed sewer demand by pump station.
That's basically, it's the committed sewer demand for the treatment plant is.
But can I comment on that, Igor? I think I can give a simple answer to that question.
Please.
The sewer plant is a global number. This breaks it down to a much more fine grain by pump station. So there's a series of pump stations throughout the city where the sewage goes from a gravity system, which are the clay pipes that run downhill, to a pressurized system. That's a pump station. So they're analyzing this at a much finer grain than just how much room does the sewer plant have versus how much are we adding to the capacity or adding to the demand. This breaks it down by pump station. So when they do their capacity letters, they can identify a zone or a pump station that may be deficient. So then they may say, come back and we've seen cases of this where they say, okay, you need to upsize this sewer main, or you need to upgrade this pump to handle more capacity because it's getting close to capacity. So it's a much finer grain analysis of capacity than just how much room does the pump station have or the sewer plant have.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. And I think it's a very good thing that they're analyzing the pump stations along the way to get to the treatment plant. But every time we talk about this, we talk about it from the perspective of the sewage treatment plant has certain capacity by the number like 49 million, whatever they were. And now I'm seeing that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about the impact of the project on a particular pumping station. Where do we see when we add all these things up, if all the pumping stations were pumping correctly and pumping all of this stuff out, where do we make the connection to the capacity in the sewage treatment plant?
So, okay, that will be all explained in the process. If
Okay,
you continue, you will get your answer.
all righty. I'm willing to go on. Let's go on.
Okay. Okay, so
Unless anybody else has any questions on what this represents.
I just have a quick
Well-
question here. So the first spreadsheet is really the most important one because it's your overall summary and keeping tabs on what's going on. Is that correct? The second ones are more of a working spreadsheet.
yes, that's correct. The one we're looking right now is our working spreadsheet.
But
Okay.
the first one is the best summary. How many years does this cover as well?
Mr. Partington, the first spreadsheet is the active ones. The second spreadsheet is a comprehensive that goes all the way back from the beginning of time. But this one is active. The second one has the completed projects on it.
So
This one
bottom line,
includes active projects.
for example, the bottom line on the first one, when you total up, take the sewer flows, is 4.8 million gallons. And then when you go to the longer one, that also totals up to something like 4 point something. So in understanding how much has been added to the system over the last X years, whatever X might be, do you add the two 4 point somethings together?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Could you repeat it, please?
The first spreadsheet totals up on the bottom of the committed sewer demand and the sewer demands to a total number, which is 4.8.
Yes, I see. Yes, it does. 4.8.
Similarly, on the other longer spreadsheet, that also totals up to, in this case, 4.6. So is the total flows encompassed by these spreadsheets, are they to be added together to make 9 point something?
It's the same.
No, they're not.
Okay.
Yeah. These
So
are separate numbers.
Wait, is it fair to say we've added, say, 4.6 MGD to the system over what period of time, based on the first spreadsheet?
Many of these projects aren't built yet, so they haven't added it yet.
But they're committed, correct?
They committed, correct.
So when you report on a new project, you show the baseline flow, the committed flow, and now I'm talking about the global sewage treatment, GTL, and then what's projected from the individual project. Now,
correct, and the flow from the project, correct. 3 components.
Yeah. And the committed can change because some of the projects that you've done the analysis for, their approval will run out. So you then take them off the committed, correct?
Yes, that happens too.
Okay.
So could you describe on this spreadsheet, if Pauline, if you could push the spreadsheet back to the beginning a little bit, could you describe to me one of the projects that's sort of fallen off and is no longer committed? What is the cutoff? When does a project fall off your spreadsheet? Pauline, are you with us? Going back the other way on the spreadsheet?
The project falls off a spreadsheet on two cases. Either
Keep going, Pauline.
Yeah, either it gets built and it's no longer a committed flow, it turns into an actual flow.
Got it.
Then it falls off that first sheet, or it misses one of the deadlines and there are some issues with the project and it never, for example, it never gets a building permit. So it falls off the sheet eventually and we take off that flow of the sheet when it misses a deadline, and we keep track of that too.
Yeah, but I noticed on this spreadsheet that there are a couple of them that fall off, but they still show the numbers in the committed side. So obviously we can't see it here because it's too small to see the whole picture. But just so I understand, this is the sort of running total, right? This is the running total.
This is right.
if some-
Exactly. It's a work.
Okay, so if somebody falls off this list, the project is no longer got a commitment. So that 4.68 changes all the time. Is that correct?
Correct. It changes all the time. It changes.
Okay.
It changes could change from day to day.
It takes a long time to fall off the list, though. Aussie's symbol is still on the list.
Yeah, it takes a long time to follow the list, but it happens.
Yeah, but then what happens if if Aussie got a permit, a capacity letter in X year, and in 5 years he hasn't done anything, he still has to come back for another capacity letter, right? Before he goes anywhere?
No,
that's what you told us last. That's what you told us last month.
Yeah, if they don't get their building permit within, I believe it's about 2 years, then they fall off the list.
So we're on this list of projects like that.
To every deadline.
Well, what I don't understand is, if you look at the column that says water sewer capacity letter issued, right? And then unread, the next one is final DRC. There could be, actually, I looked at a couple of them, there could be a number of years between when the capacity letter was issued and final DRC approval, okay? So that would be one time. If you hit 2 years, you would have to start all over again. Am I correct?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
That's
all right. So now we got a, yeah. So if there's 2 years between the column that says water capacity letter issue date and final DRC approval, if there's more than 2 years, they go back to the end of the line. Is that correct?
Okay. First deadline is the duration of the capacity letter itself. The capacity letter is good for 1 year. If you don't get a final DRC approval within that 1 year, you go back to the end of the line.
Okay, stop right there. You go. Excellent. So the between those two columns, it's a 1 year deadline. Okay.
Yes.
Now let's say you got a final DRC approval. Okay. You got your approval. And it's 4 years before you even get to the next column. Construction applications submittal date.
Several times they change projects, they change the number of units they want to build, and some projects go between these two for a while because they just make too many changes.
So what is the next deadline? What is the next period where these letters become stale and you have to start all over again?
Okay, once you get your final DRC approval.
Yes.
And I believe that between the final DRC approval, I can get you the exact time duration there, double check it, but I believe it's roughly about a couple of years. If you don't get your building permit after final DRC approval, you fall off the list.
Well, that's an important number to know, I think.
Yeah.
Because I looked at this chart and it's all over the table. Some of them, there's a 3 year difference between final DRC and master permit issued. Some of them are 2 years, some of them are 4 years. There's a whole big range of the number of years that it takes to get to another deadline where you fall off the list.
Because a lot of projects go back and forth several times.
Right. And as they're going back and forth, are you reissuing these letters, or are they still stuck on the same letter that they got from final DRC approval?
It depends on the situation, but we do reissue these letters. We do it all the time. We issue new letters to the ones that's been expired, and the answer is yes, we do that.
Marilyn?
Yes,
hey,
Michael, hi.
First off, sorry for the delay in getting here. The way it should work is, as it was said, you get that capacity letter, you have to get your approval within a year, or you have to re-up your capacity letter. Once you get it, let's say a site plan approval, development order, the code will specify how long the various types of development orders are valid. I believe a site plan's 2 years. I'll look at Muni code. So you got 24 months to pull a building permit in order to vest your rights under that development order. Sometimes though, you can get extensions. The code will probably provide for like a one-time 12-month extension that you can apply for to extend the duration of the enforceability of that development order. And then there are also statutory extensions. If there are states in a state of emergency is declared, like for hurricane, that will toll that 24 months as it's winding down. It'll suspend that. It'll toll the development order expiration. And then once the state of emergency is over, it'll add another, I believe it's 90 days. And so I've got site plan approvals that were granted 2 or 3 years ago in various places that won't expire until 2024 because of all the Zika virus and all the hurricanes and green, red algae, all these different state emergency orders have extended these development orders. And so that's why you'll see some that are more than 2 years, because they get extended for various reasons. But it should stay on the books as far as a committed, approved development.
It does.
Yeah.
It should stay. Yeah, no, I thank you for that. And I understand that the development approvals of necessity must, of course, be extended under extenuating circumstances. But I'm trying to find out what is the impact on the total number. So if we say that the only time you get jumped off this list is within a year of you getting your initial letter and your final DRC approval, everybody stays on this list until the development orders run out. Is that fair to say? Everybody stays on this list and that capacity is committed until the development order runs out. Am I understanding this correctly?
Well, if it expires. If it expires, then it's off the books. But
that's what I mean. Until your development approval expires, you stay on this list. That's what I'm just trying to understand.
It's
right?
not only that, but as if your development is still in process. So for instance, your approval still, so for instance, HHF is on this list. Okay. They're not approved. Correct?
Correct.
But they've applied.
Yeah,
so they're on this list.
You will
stay on this list as long as that application is open, correct?
Yeah, that's automatic. I mean, you're on the list while the approvals are going on. And you stages of approval, all these dates, because you could see the projects there that the last 2 or 3 columns aren't even filled in and says open, open, open. They're going through the approval right now. They're going to stay, that number going to stay there while they're going through all the approvals.
Right. Yeah, no, I understand that. But the only time that the letter gets changed or gets rescinded is in this first year between when it gets issued and when you get the final DRC approval. It could take you 2 more years to get a final DRC approval. It could take you 6 months to get a final DRC approval. But the letter is only good for 1 year. So if after 1 year, I still don't have a final DRC approval, I get a new letter. Am I right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Once I get a final DRC
there are
approval.
some exceptions, but generally, yes. Once
okay, good. There's always exceptions. But once I get a final DRC approval, I don't fall off this list while I'm working on my plans, while I'm changing the project, while I'm got an extension from the governor for an emergency. I don't fall off this list. Yeah, until when? Until my development order expires, according to Michael. Am I right, Michael? Is that what you're telling me?
If it expires, I mean, you may vest, you may pull your building permits, you may, build the thing and there it is, it's up. If you're in construction, under the building code, you have to get inspections over, like every 90 days, you have to keep getting inspections to keep the permits alive. Well, if you keep the permits alive, then you've kept the permits alive, everything is still on the books. There could be a case, I suppose, where maybe a construction is abandoned or a use is abandoned. In some places, like in Palm Beach County, if you've got an abandoned use, you'll lose your traffic concurrency after 5 years, right? If it just sits there. And I'm not quite sure how Fort Lauderdale does that if you have an abandoned use after 5 years. But
let me explain. I can explain that. The DRC technically expires, but there's all kinds of methods, as you said, to extend that DRC. So the most blatant example I know of is the Aussie Symbol project, which was approved, I believe, in 2010, and it still has a valid approval in place now 11 years later. Mm-hmm. And obviously it hasn't started construction.
Yeah. Right. Okay, well, this is good information. This is interesting. from my perspective, it's a little different from what I thought. I thought there was like a period of time where they fall off the list, and apparently not really a period of time where they fall off the list, in my opinion, because they could go on forever until they're either built, abandoned, or their permits run out. So this is good information for me to understand. Peter.
So, Chair, I personally think it would be good if this spreadsheet or comparable traveled with each DRC capacity sufficiency letter that's going in front of the DRC and possibly in front of the City Commission. That's just something to be considered. And then I had a question for Igor. Is there a way that you take account of developments outside the city boundary in areas that are being served by the city's infrastructure?
Yes, we do.
How do you know about those?
Well, we have to if we are the ones who supply their with water, we know about them. They ask us,
who do you write the sufficiency?
They go through the approval process with us.
But who are you writing the sufficiency letter to? For example, Oakland Park City Commission or DRC? I mean, they have to involve you, don't they? You wouldn't necessarily know.
It's a little bit different process. It's more simplified because let's say if we supply some development outside of our city limits with water, we also give them a letter stating that we do have enough capacity to supply you a certain amount of water. This is it. So whatever they do beyond the boundaries is up to them.
And you take this spreadsheet.
Like Wilton Manors or something, you know.
Yeah, the fifth to last line item on here is the Wilton Manors LUPA, Peter.
Okay. Well, that's good.
So they caught it because the county has to review the LUPA and they're going to want to see a capacity letter from the city as part of a LUPA change.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because it's our water. We have to make sure we have enough.
All right. And then, Chair, I have another question, if it's all right with you, for Igor.
Certainly. Let's get them all out.
Now to go to what we were discussing earlier. So would it be correct to say, Igor, that some of the flows, assuming they have materialized already from this spreadsheet, finish up in infrastructure or affecting infrastructure that is possibly on the Hazen-Sawyer high risk list that we were discussing earlier?
I can't tell you right now. I have to have a list in front of me.
Well, I mean, Charlie's right that the two most important pieces of infrastructure, unfortunately, the city's getting them near completion, are those two trunk force mains, north and south, 54, 48, etc. But I'm going to venture to suggest that going back 2, 3, 4 years, there was flow in there, minimal though it might be, that was coming from developments that have been approved within the last 10 years. And all I'm getting at is we now know from Hazen's work that we have 18 miles approximately of high risk force main. So again, I'm going back to this issue of condition as the missing link, at least as far as the lay people are possibly concerned, in evaluating capacity. Capacity is one thing. Is it a good idea to put more load onto it? Seems to me to be a different question.
I mean, yeah, I mean, there is a possibility that these two lists overlap. Fortunately, I don't have Hazen's list in front of me. Can't tell you.
And that's where I'm going. When I said earlier that,
but
basis for a moratorium
yeah,
would be
we got to realize
capacity evaluation system. And the only reason for doing that would be that it arguably does not fully take account of the condition of the city's infrastructure.
Yeah, the one thing we've got to realize that with the force main, if you add some sewer flow to the pump station, force main it's not going to change pressure in the force main. Force main is going to remain under the same pressure and under the same flow, because what happens, how the sewer pump station work, they don't work continuously. They pump, the pumps kick in several times an hour. So if you add 1% to the daily flow, that only means that that pump will kick in a little bit more often, but still the same flow is going to go through the same pipe with the same pressure.
But you guys do look at the local pump station, and you have
we do as part of our evaluation.
You have a maximum runtime that you want the pump stations to run ideally. And if a development puts a load onto that local pump station that's then going to exceed that runtime, you have asked them at a neighborhood level to upgrade the pump station, correct?
Correct.
Let me make a comment here, if I may.
Okay.
You're absolutely correct about the run times on the pump stations, and that's one of the things that has occurred from the II, from the infiltration of groundwater, and it's extended the run times of the various pump stations where they've had, a great deal of infiltration. So one way of looking at it is the capacity has been increased, but as the city moves forward in fixing up these gravity mains and stopping the infiltration of the groundwater, your capacity starts to have more capacity to work with.
Correct.
That's correct.
Chairman
Yes,
Romano?
ma'am. Yes.
I just wanted to
I'm
make
with
sure, because I think I understood something that Peter was saying, and I want to make sure I understand it correctly. We've actually had the staff come and talk about the capacity analysis and their review process. But if I understand correctly, what you want us to do is to possibly modify that process to include what Trish and her team has done with the likelihood of failure and the consequence of failure results when they're actually evaluating any new requests that come through. Is that what I'm understanding?
Correct. What I envision is that in the standard letters, and I wish they were incidentally completely standardized, so there's a template and you just plugged in different numbers each time. But what I would like to see is, small though they may be, as they get miles away from the origin of the development, that the flows are traced, and if 1 gallon, I'm being ridiculous, touches the a high-risk force main, that at least gets explicitly considered as to whether that's a good idea.
If I could follow on with Peter, I think we were talking in this direction at the last meeting, and I think it's very good that we're beginning to get a little bit more information about this whole capacity issue. I know it's good for me because I'm learning stuff that I didn't know. But I think Peter is right. When we talk about, it's one thing to have capacity and it's another thing to have condition. And you must understand that the Hazen work, while it's way, way, way more comprehensive and sophisticated than the Reese report work, they have now identified certain areas of the city, certain force mains, where they believe there's a high risk. And if a project, even these old projects, okay, although there's nothing you can do once the development capacity letter is issued, or once a permit is issued, there's, it's over, it's done. But we need to look at how many of these projects are using that at-risk infrastructure, and should we in fact be tapping the brakes on additional development that uses the high-risk infrastructure until the 4 or 5 years down the road when those pipes are going to be fixed, because they're not going to be fixed until 4 or 5 years down the road. Even if they're in a SIP plan, even if there's, partial funding, they're not going to get designed and built and ready and fixed. So that window, that very, very narrow window, peculiar situation, is something we might want to explore more. Okay, am I right, Peter? Is that where we're going here?
Yes. And I'm going to go a little further and say, from what I reread of the city attorney's comments to us, is that it would be difficult to predicate a moratorium on the sort of scenario that I just described, the condition being impacted by a very de minimis flow from a ways away. What I did hear him say was, if you wish to consider in detail the process by which you evaluate adequacy for developments, it might be possible to declare a moratorium just to do that, and that would be of very limited duration. That seems to me to be the only or the most promising avenue for a moratorium.
I would like to get some additional feedback from the other members of the committee. Jerry?
What I was going to say is, I would lose the word moratorium, because it implies a broad-based or a broader area than what we're talking about. If you combine the condition and the capacity, and you avoid or limit or stop construction in a particular spot, I would just call that, let the system work. Let the people do their jobs and say, you can't build here yet, you can't construct something here yet because either the condition, the capacity, or something isn't right. But to continue the use of the word moratorium implies a broad-based nature of the problem. And going back to, somebody mentioned it earlier in the discussion, I don't see it. I don't see a broad-based reason to stop anything.
Okay, Michael, did you have your hand up again? Michael?
Yeah, no.
I thought I saw your hand up again.
It may have been. I do agree with what Jerry was saying, and maybe that's why I had my hand up. I didn't intend to raise my hand, but I do tend to agree with what he said. I mean, it is state law that development orders can't be issued unless you're concurrent on public facilities such as water and sewer, and so it may just be that you just need to let that system work, and maybe to your point that the way the city does that evaluation may need to be, maybe it needs to be tended to, but that's already the law, and so it's and I think that's more. I mean, yeah, I agree with what Jerry said.
Okay, cool.
Marilyn,
about
did you get me?
Yeah, I'm ready for you now.
Yeah, I like where Jerry's going. And I think, especially when we get the hysteria from the general population, let's call it that, of, oh, look, they assume that the staff are idiots, okay? And if you go through these DRCs and look at these letters, for instance, Flagler Village, there's a decent sized project that Alan Hooper is doing on the west side of Andrews. The condition called for them to install a new pumping station. So part of the deal is they're going to install a pumping station if they want to build that project before the city decides to install a pump station there. So I think many times the general population, when they want to get worried about this, assumes that staff is sitting there waving a green flag or whatever it is to start the race, when that's not the case. My experience with staff is they've been very careful. If they identify a potential issue, it's brought to the forefront, and the developer's told, listen, if you want to build this project, you need to take care of these things. And the multiple instances I've seen where the developer does, whether it's on the beach, I've seen projects where additional force main was installed or replaced, lift stations were done. We had a project out at Broward 95 back in Peter's time. We spent $500,000 to put in a new lift station ourselves to make that project viable. So I think it's very easy to dismiss what staff does, But when I look at these lists and how comprehensive they are and how closely they watch this, I don't know that we're giving them the respect that they really deserve.
Excellent point.
Said, well said. Excellent.
Thank you,
Okay.
You're welcome.
Do you want to go through
Just
one
to
of
prove
the
my point.
letters? Yeah, right.
Kidding,
That's
I'm
a
kidding.
conflict.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I know you're kidding. Igor, do you want to go through one of the global letters so we could see the process in real time for a real project?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go to the one. Hold on a second. Let's scroll down and see the one which has been almost completed. It's on let's say number 1. EC Marriott Hotel on Alhambra Street. It's 171 room hotel. And it's from way back. They had a DRC review back in 2015. So, and they got a letter issued in 2018.
Pauline, can we have that up, please?
It's kind of cut off on if it's the one I'm thinking it is. 3017 to 3029 Alhambra. Is that right? Or
yes, yeah, that's the one.
215 residential units to replace 21 unit condo. Is that the one?
What page are you on?
That's the one above that. We could look at either one of those. The 300 Alhambra is the more recent one, and that one that would be a good example when they changed the project several times. They changed the number of units, and I just, off the top of my head, I issued probably 2 or 3 capacity letters to them because they're changing the units.
Igor?
Yes.
What page are you on?
Oh, I am on that first table.
It's 17. It's the first, right?
Number 174.
No, I've lost it.
Called 3000 Alhambra. Go up, keep going up. Yep. Now go to magnification of like 400. And go to number 174. Go a little bit, I think. Go down. Go down. Keep going.
You said it's 174?
Yeah, 174. Yeah, you got it.
You're right there at the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, the letters are cut off. It's 3000 Alhambra.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a 215 residential units. Basically, it's a larger condo that is supposed to replace the existing condo of just 21 units. There's a small condo there previously, and it is still going through approvals, and we just recently issued them a new capacity letter. And they went through several capacity letters with us because they've been changing the design. They had to change the number of units. And every time something like that changes, we have to issue a new capacity letter because it changes the proposed flow. So if you could look, it's going through final DRC approval right now.
I'm sorry, on this chart here, which one are we looking at? What's up on the screen right now? What are we looking at?
3000 Alhambra, number 174.
174.
Yes.
174, I have R18025.
I don't see 174
Yeah,
here.
R1, yeah, that's a DRC number, correct. It's a DRC number R18025.
Oh,
It's up from the bottom.
Yeah.
8025.
Yeah.
Alhambra, got it.
They had a first DRC review back in 2018. And
Can we move the chart to see that? Sideways, Pauline. Sideways.
The first review is cut off, but it's the second cell from the left, 424, 28.
Yeah, 424, 2018.
I would have to close this out and take it out of the PDF form.
Oh.
You can scroll to the right, Pauline.
There's more to
we could look,
there you go. There you go.
Look at the one below that. Look at a Fort Lauderdale Aquatic Center. That's the one that's further along in the process.
That's A19006, correct?
Yes, correct.
This is not working, guys. This is not working. We're not following this. Is there another way that we can do this?
It's the one where the hand is showing on it. She's actually showing the hand on it right now. The Florida Aquatic Center, 501
okay.
Boulevard.
I can see it here, but I don't understand why we're doing it here. I thought we were going through a letter, a specific letter.
You want to go through a specific letter?
Isn't that what we were going to do? Or what you're saying is we're going to go through a specific project.
If you want to go through a letter, I can open it and see.
No. I'm just saying, if what you're trying to do, Igor, is you're trying to follow one specific project through the whole.
Yes, exactly. I was just following one specific.
That's what it is.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we'll follow Pauline's hand. And we can still do it for the Alhambra one if you want. We'll just follow her hand.
Yeah, okay. So you see the Fort Lauderdale Aquatic Center.
Yes.
Next one is their address. Next one, that's a description of the project. It's at the renovation of the Fort Lauderdale Aquatic Center, an addition of 2,912 stadium seats.
Got it.
Then the next one.
So the first, that column is when they got their first letter.
Yes, that's when they got the capacity letter. Water sewer capacity letter issued dates, 5/17/2019.
Got it.
Scroll to the right a little bit, Pauline.
Back to the hand. Okay.
Well, so the next one, that's when they got the final DRC approval. They got it in December of last year, a little over a year ago.
Okay.
Then they submitted, they made a submittal for construction application on 7/30/2019. And their permit is, their construction, their permit is open. So they actually in the process of constructing right now. So that's, and then we'll go through the flows. That's additional flows we have. They have 0.012 million gallons a day of additional flow allocated to them. They're in the pump station sub-basin D31, which is, over there on the beach. I believe it's a little bit north of Aquatic Center. And this is a number of the ID of the manhole where they connecting by with their sewer line. And the last three numbers is the increase of water, increase of a sewer, and the very last number is the committed sewer flow for the D31 pump station, which is a summary of all the 4 projects that's currently on the list.
Did you, as in that project, did you require any upgraded infrastructure?
I don't believe we did. I'm gonna have to look at the letter to make sure, but
All right. Okay.
if I remember correctly, no. I think the infrastructure was fine. Because the increase
Capacity-wise.
fairly small too. If you could look at the increase, it's
Yes.
fairly small.
Okay, Igor, could I just follow this up a minute? Everything that's shown in blue right there where the hand is, those are a number of projects that are in that same basin. And so same pump station area, so that when you accumulate the numbers, the 0.09, that's how much extra capacity those projects are putting on that sewer force main? 0.09?
Yes, that's how much flow, that's the committed flow. That's how much flow these projects will add to the existing flow, to this particular pump station, which is D31.
And you deem that that pump station has the capacity to accept that additional flow?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and then where that excuse me, pump station pumps, is it pumping into one of those high-risk pipes that have not been fixed, that have been identified as high risk, but have not yet been fixed? See, that's where I think Peter was going.
So we can take a look at that
I can't
D31.
right now, I have to look at the map and at the
No, I don't expect you to do it right now. This doesn't get solved at any particular meeting. But what the concept is,
you're making the connection you're trying to make. So D31, we need to take a look and see where D31 falls on Hazen and Sawyer's likelihood of failure, consequence of failure map.
Chair?
Yes, Peter.
I think
yes,
I can
Peter.
help you with that. If you put me up, you may be able to see this. So put my face on the screen, please.
Your face on the screen. Okay.
I'm not sure what I'm looking at. So this is from the Hazen report, and what Igor just described to us. Can anyone see this? All right.
You need to move it to your right.
To my right. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's the map of medium and high risk force mains that we saw last meeting. And you can see down on the beach there where Igor was just describing that development, it's all medium risk.
You need to move it farther right and up a hair. That's it. You're good.
But
what's the one red dot there? Is that's north of Bahia?
I don't know what that is. That may be a pump station. I don't know.
No, that's pipes. That's not pump stations. That map is pipes.
Yes, I don't know why there's a little.
You got to move it right again. Move it right. See the one little dot on the right side? That's actually
like
pretty close. That's pretty close to the aquatic center.
Yeah, well, but what Anisha was saying, I think, is exactly where I was going, and I'm just going a little further with what I know. That particular development does not appear to put anything much onto anything in red, but there will be occasions, as you can see, where the red is affected. The worst situations are always on those two major force mains that are now 75% hopefully complete.
Right.
But it illustrates exactly what I was saying.
Okay. So Igor, did you have any additional information you wanted to give us?
Yes, if you want to look at the last table of 3, it's basically a summary.
Okay, let's look at table 3 then.
Yeah, it says pump stations. It's just one fairly small compared to the other ones, tables. Go down, keep going down. Go down, keep going down. Keep going, keep going. That's a little one pager. The last table of 3.
Oh, that's the pump station one?
Yes, that's the pump station one. Keep going down.
It's another page. It's page 22, is it? 22.
I believe so, yes. Yep.
That's it. That's it.
There, yeah. You maybe you do a little smaller magnification. Yeah.
And those, the red, correct me, Igor, is the red are pump stations with excessive run times, correct?
Correct. The red are the pump station where the run times are higher than 10 hours a day.
Which is no good, right? That's
Yeah.
not a good thing.
No, it's not a good thing. Here's the difference between column 2 and column 4. Column 2 is the current run times. And you see there are several pump stations. And actually, again, I have to say that that table is also a fluid table. It's a work in progress because it's being constantly updated. For example, pump stations D10 and D11 has been refurbished so that red will go back into white. But other than that, here's the thing. So the red is where it's higher than 10. The yellow is when the run times are higher than 8. So it's not there yet, but it's on our watch list. So it's kind of a priority, how we prioritize them in terms of what pump stations are the next to be refurbished, rebuilt, pumps updated, so on and so forth.
So
And
Igor, how does this relate to the capacity letters? Since you analyze the additional developments impacts on a pump station, and if it puts another 0.9 onto that pump station, if that's one of the pump stations in red, do you not issue a capacity letter?
we issue a capacity letter with a condition.
That he puts in a new pump station?
Yes, that's, well, not necessarily
Upgrade.
new station,
Upgrade.
but
Upgrades the capacity, yeah, upgrades.
to accommodate the increase.
Hey, Marilyn, Omar here.
Yes, Omar.
There is some cases where a pump station might be very old and is ready to be rehabbed. So sometimes the city will put down the capital to upgrade the pump station or rehab it. We're going through one right now at the next to that big parking lot there with the marina. That pump station was really for rehab. So we just, put X amount of money, and the developer put X amount of money to bring it up to the standard. But that does happen sometimes.
Okay, and is that money that he puts in through impact fees or in addition to impact fees?
It's in addition to impact fees sometimes.
And how do we know that that pump station is going to be online before he starts to pumping, flushing the toilets?
Well, he has to provide a schedule, and they're responsible for meeting the deadline. And there is the flows are going to be switched from one pump station to the other until the pump station is completed. Okay.
Where is A7?
A lot of times it's a condition of CO as well.
Well, A7 is by the railroad tracks, right?
This is Abby. Yeah, A7 is a large pump station across from the county garage next to the river. That's one of the major downtown station. It's currently we have a CIP project to refurbish that pump station. There's a contract in place, and the contractor already have a schedule, and he put the order for some material. That project will be starting pretty soon. The pump station that was referred to earlier as D31, that's the pump station up there by the Las Olas garage. That also going to be redone as part of the marina development projects out there. So that's got, it's going to have a new capacity. It's going to be brand new pump station. The pump station that Igor referred to as D10 and D11, those are two pump stations on Hendricks Isle and Isle of Venice. We had a CIP project that refurbished those two stations, and that has been completed on the books. We took beneficial operation of that about 8 months ago. Flagler, which is down there, pump station A14, we started a new CIP project to put a new pump station there. Operationally, anytime we kind of look at all of these and we see a problematic area, we immediately go down there and do a pump replacement. In fact, since Hurricane Irma in 2017, we have gone through a lot of refurbishing of these stations by buying and new pumps and replacing these pumps on a regular basis.
821 shows a huge increase. Where's that one? 821.
821 is 821 looks good.
That's near Searstown.
Something in there doesn't make any sense. That much committed flow should not increase the run hours. It could be Searstown, and I think that's what Igor had made a recommendation for a new pump station or a private station or something. Because it developed. Go ahead.
You have proposed 824 going in there.
Yeah, they're building a new pump station, 820.
Okay.
Right by the 821, and once 824 is built, the flow is going to split. So 824 is going to take some of the flow that goes right now to 821. It's going to pump it in a different force mean. So that's
Guys, this is like three-dimensional chess, you know?
Fascinating.
It's fascinating, but it's not very satisfying. Can I ask a question a different way? If everything is in red, okay, any pump station that's in red, is it currently funded through the Bond Act or through the CIP program to be upgraded or replaced within the amount of time necessary to handle that projected flow?
Chairman Mamano, we would not be able to answer that question because these two do not talk together. What we have prepared as a part of the new business under pump station replacement is Omar is going to provide some information on that with the number of pump stations and what's in the consent order as such. But looking at this, I can't tell you whatever is in red is in what stage it's in based on what's read on this document.
Okay. Well, that's another piece of information, another piece of this three-dimensional puzzle that we have to work on.
Also, Chairman Mamano, I'm sorry, but the moderator mentioned to Pauline that they have a 5 o'clock. And so it's almost like the conference room is going to be busy, but the moderator is telling us that 5 o'clock, they need the bridge line.
Okay, no, I understand. I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm sort of overwhelmed with a whole lot of information here. And I'm going to need a little bit of time, me personally, to absorb some of the stuff that I've seen today. So I would like to, what's left on the agenda, darling?
You have impact fee allocation, pump station replacement, and the sewer main breaks in the map.
Okay, can we do impact fees? Because let's continue on and go on to impact fees.
Okay, well,
I would suggest we go on to item number 4 and go on to impact fee allocation. Peter.
Again, this is our prime directive, and I think what I'd like to suggest is that that staff also consider the discussion we've had and whether they can see any tweaking of their process to include a more explicit consideration of condition. And B, when this subject is next agendaed, perhaps we should have a representative of the city attorney again, because a lot of what we can say about a moratorium has a legal basis.
Okay, I'll work on that with Pauline.
Thank you.
All right, impact fee allocation, item number 4.
I have Kim Holcomb, our business manager. She's going to talk about the impact fee process and what that, just kind of give you an overview of that process and what that means. Kim? Kim, are you there?
Did we lose Kim?
Okay, sorry. I am here. I had to unmute myself. Good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. Thank you for allowing me to address you this afternoon. Regarding the impact fees, I believe everyone knows what that is, but I'll just go over that. It's a one-time fee that's paid by new customers that are connecting to the water and sewer system. And it's commensurate, the fee is commensurate to the capacity that they need, whether they're existing customers or new customers, if they're refurbishing, rehabbing, and increasing their capacity needs, or whether it's new development. They buy into the system based on those ERUs or ERCs, as Igor was explaining to us. And those fees are used to increase the capacity of the system overall. Of course, it's not they would pay according to the ERUs that are assessed per unit. And you all were provided by Pauline the capital expansion fees website connection page and also the fees schedule. We did have, in 2018, we contracted with Stantec to review and analyze and recommend water and sewer rates, given the current environment that we're in, considering the revenues that we need to pull in, and also considering the bond, the current $200 million bond, and also the future $200 million, which I believe we have planned for 2 additional tranches. The next one that's in the plan is in 2023. So again, they recommended looking at the cost for increasing the capacity of both our water system and respectively our sewer system, and updated the ERC formula and considered the gallons per day. That's that max 300 gallons per day, 300, I think it's 300 million gallons per day for water, and 175 gallons per day. And the fees have been updated. We also have on that website link, we have the previous fees, so you can see the delta between the two and how that we have updated our rates to, again, accommodate the capacity cost, the increase of capacity cost.
Kimberly, can I interrupt you just a second? For the benefit of those people on the committee who are newer to the committee, this was one of the 4 recommendations that this committee made to the commission in our first report to them, that they update the impact fees. And we were very gratified to see that was done. And just so that you know that, what you say to the commission sometimes has an effect, and they took our recommendation. We weren't the only ones recommending it, but we gave our added support to this recommendation. So this was a good thing that happened from our work.
Maybe
Yes,
for you.
thank you very
not for
much.
me.
No.
Yeah.
I hear you, Charlie.
I've got a couple of permits that I've pulled just to give you guys an idea of these fees, what they translate into.
Yeah.
So the one I'm reading, I think, is for a building that we're getting ready to start on Federal Highway. Josie, these permits, what are they for? Which properties?
First one I gave you was 699, the second was 440.
Okay, so one of them was on the 19 fees, based on the 2019 fees. And the both buildings are about 30,000 square feet. So they're roughly the size of, they're a little bigger than the Kelly Houston building on Federal Highway, where Taco Craft just opened, to give you an idea. Now, these are commercial, obviously, instead of residential. The one building on 19 fees, on the 19 fee structure, 2019 fee structure, we paid an $18,000 sewer fee and a $38,000 water fee. The second building, which is on the newer fee structure. We paid a $34,000 water fee and a $32,000 sewer fee. So that was $67,000 on a 24,000 square foot building. So we paid almost $3 a foot. So a lot of money. So these new buildings are kicking in, you know, many of the apartment buildings are 7-figure water and sewer impact fees that these newer buildings are paying, or especially the apartments.
Mhm.
Not cheap.
No, not cheap. But can we also look at where that money goes and how we spend it? We want to make sure that we spend it appropriately. And so I don't know the connection between, does it go into a piggy bank someplace? And is there a list of projects that it's assigned to? Or does it just get sort of flows through the CIP budget and we don't really follow it? That would be a Kimberly question.
What are the issues?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. These impact fees are held in separate funds, one for the water, one for the wastewater, and it's used specifically for capacity increasing of the system, and also for the bond payments for those loans, those bonds that were floated for the express increase of capacity of the systems.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's not a direct to the project, but it's for the cost of those projects that increase the capacity.
So when you say those projects that increase the capacity, what are you talking about? What's an example of a project that increases capacity that we could use this money for?
Well, it's my understanding, and I'm not an engineer, Madam Chair, but it is my understanding for those pipes that we upsize to increase the capacity of flows, we could use that money for those projects where we increase the size of a pump station, or we add an additional line. For instance, the redundant line is increasing the capacity, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be mistaken, but where we add pipes that were not there.
Okay,
So,
I'm hearing you.
Thereby being able to add additional capacity to our treatment plant or flow from our water plant, then we could use that money again for directly towards that project, which to my knowledge has not happened in a direct manner. It has happened more indirectly in the payment for the bond interest.
I think it's very important that we know the answer to this question more specifically, because when I think of an impact fee, I think of, okay, now we have a bunch of money, and if we're going to add a second injection, a third or fourth injection well to the treatment plant, or if we're going to upgrade a pump station or replace an old pipe, that makes a simple one-to-one connection to me. But if we're using that money to pay for the bonds, then there's got to be a connection between what project the bond was used for in order to increase capacity. I'm very, very concerned that this gets sort of explained better, because when I get complaints about, well, what about development? What about impact fees? It would be really nice to be able to explain to people that, you know, $1 million was collected and $1 million went into a new pump station. And I, from what I'm hearing from you, I couldn't tell people that. You couldn't tell people that either.
I think it's important to note that the impact fees are not maintained in public works. They're in the building department in DSD. And not that that doesn't allow us to dig a little deeper into trying to provide some information, but I just wanted to make that be known. Those dollars are not housed here in public works.
But yes, you spend those dollars.
Yes.
We do.
So you got to have some way to go get them.
We do, and we work in conjunction with our budget and finance department. Those fees are collected. It's my understanding those fees are collected upon the CO issuance.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the recommendations from Stantec at their rate study, their final rate study report, was that we would assess and review the rates every 3 years. And for the rate recommendations that were proposed back in April of 19, the commission heard and adopted them September, and according to state statute, we had to advertise, and 90 days after we could implement those impact fee increases, and that was done. But on December 16th of last year, those higher impact fees were implemented.
Okay, that's interesting. Michael?
Madam Chair, yeah.
Certainly.
If in your free time, which I don't know if you have any or not, but Florida has a statute, the Impact Fee Act. It's if you want to write it down, it's Chapter 163, Section 31801, and it lists all the requirements for impact fees. It talks about the 90-day notice that was just discussed whenever you're increasing the impact fees. It describes how the impact fees have to be held in the special account. It also talks about how the impact fee has to be rationally related to the impact of the development, and then the way it's used has to be rationally related, providing a benefit to that development.
Can somebody please mute themselves if they're not part of the discussion, please? Yes, Michael, go on.
Yeah, and then it discusses how they have to, the local government has to provide an accounting for impact fees that are collected and spent. And so it lists a lot of the questions you're asking are laid out in the statute. And so I think that may be helpful for you.
Well, Michael, as it turns out, I'm very familiar with that particular piece of legislation because I work for I'm the legislative representative for the Broward Planners. So I'm very familiar with the legislation. And I'm sure the city has done all things according to the legislation. That's not my concern. My concern is you collect the money, okay, you put it in a bank, and then the public works people come and say, give me some money for this project. And I want to know what project they asked for that money for. I want to know where the money goes.
Yeah, so you want that accounting.
I want an accounting. I want an accounting of where the money goes. I want to know, I feel bad for Charlie in a way because he's the one his projects are the ones that are having to pay for all this money. You would think that he, as well as I, would want to know, where did the money go? And
we did not have enough time to pull together some of the information.
I appreciate that, and this is an ongoing process.
No, I know, but I had Kimberly to provide an overview because unfortunately we didn't have enough time to pull together. It was a big task to try to get a lot of this, and we fell short on this part in trying to pull together the summary. So I asked her just to prepare an overview just to make sure that everyone that's a part of the board understood at least the impact process.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the work you guys are doing. And as I said, this is a learning process for us, and I hope it's also a process that's helping you to sort of focus on some of these things. Sometimes you get so hung up on the details of what you're doing every day that you forget, to not forget, but you can't look at the big picture. So I'm hoping that this is a worthwhile project for both sides. So I want to pursue this discussion on the next agenda.
Absolutely, we'll definitely have it there for further conversation and have that accounting that you're looking for.
Excellento. All right, what else do we have on our agenda? Because we got to get out of the room. They need the room.
Omar's going to do a little bit of talk about the pump station replacement.
Okay.
Omar?
Yeah. Hey, so with the pump station updates, operations are the ones that actually manage these pump stations. So they know which pump stations are in poor shape, which need rehab, which ones need to be upgraded, upsized, etc. So every year when we develop the CIP, we meet with operations and see which pump stations we need to do work on. On the consent, or in the case of the consent order, we have 6 major problematic pump stations that were part of the consent order. All those 6 pump stations have been completed. I'm sorry, it's 5, I think. I think it's 5. Let's see.
Omar, can you tell them how many total pump stations we have in the system?
So it's 5 pump stations on the, yeah, so we have a total of 186 pump stations on the whole system. And right now, we are working on 15 pump stations that are either on bidding, design, and construction. Next year, or the next 5 years, we have other pump stations that we will be working on, depending on the need. So that's something that we look with operations every year when we develop the CIP, and we interact too with DSD and this guy. That's why Igor and those guys are there as part of Public Works to get a better idea of what needs to be done, and they can be familiarized with all the pump stations. So that's the update right now. We have 15, and in the next 5 years, I will have to go back and see how many more there are. And some of them are part of the bond fund, some are CIP, and so we're making a lot of progress on the pump stations.
Any questions for Igor, for Omar?
No, Chair, but just to say that Jackie had to leave. She had a death in the family. So
Oh,
I'm
dear.
not sure if that leaves us with a quorum. Just check that.
I think it does. We had over the quorum.
Okay.
Pauline, can we move on to item number, I don't know. Let me ask you guys, since it's 4:45. Item number 5 is continued water and sewer breaks reports, mapping of the water main breaks and sewerage breaks and high-risk infrastructure. I looked at that material. That's a lot of important material. I don't know if we want to rush that today or if we want to just hold that over to the next meeting. What do you all say? Can I get a consensus, opinions from the group?
Madam Chair, could I ask a question?
Sure.
I think that actually those maps, I wanted to understand that meet your needs, because based on what I understood, I had GIS, we work with GIS and the staff work with them to plot everything. I just want to make sure we met the need of what you were looking for.
From my perspective, that you did. And that's
Yes.
why I don't want to give them short shift, because that's very important information, because we specifically asked to look at where these breaks, rather than just look at a list of the breaks, look at where they actually are occurring, so that we could get a sense of, are there certain areas in the city where we need to be more proactive? So I think you did an excellent job, and I don't want to give it short shift. It's been a long meeting with a lot of information. And if my other members are in agreement, perhaps that's the one item that we should carry over for next meeting. What do you say, people?
Got my vote.
On that? All right. Okay. So with that, we have actually gotten through the agenda. We got through everything except for item number 5. And Pauline, let me just check one more time. Is there anybody else in the public who wants to speak?
No one else has signed up.
Excellent. Okay, well, unless there are other items that people want to bring up, new business or something like that, maybe this is an appropriate time to take a break. Peter.
Can we get an update at the next meeting about the progress on the big 42-inch main and where we are with it and expected completion?
Omar's on the line. He can tell you that, because we do one every week or every 2 weeks. Omar?
I can tell you we're about 77% completed on the project. The deadline is July, late July, and we believe that we can have it earlier. It's a lot of progress going on. It's all going well. So hopefully we'll be on time and under budget, but everything is going well. So
will it be one big shift of the whole system over to the new pipe, or will it be a little bit at a time?
Actually, there is a section that we engage to in the
Rio
system.
Vista.
Yeah, Rio Vista.
Yeah, through Lauderdale.
The north part is probably going to be a one shot, and the rest is going to happen near that time.
So Omar, can I ask? Yeah, go on, Charlie.
I would just say that, we own a lot of properties in the Las Olas area, and I live in Victoria Park, and I just want to say that so far they've done an excellent job of minimal interference with people, and I'm impressed with how it's gone. And I'm in the middle of the sewer relining and water main replacement in Victoria Park as well. And they've really done a good job. Very impressed with what I've seen.
Yeah,
Thank
we're all going to adopt David Mancini into our families. Really. So I have a question, a quick question, Omar. When you say the project was split in two, the south side and the north side, right? So when you say the project is going to be completed by July, do you mean both of them or just the one of them?
Both of them.
Both of them.
Yeah.
And the relining of the old pipe, which happens after the new pipe is in service, is that already budgeted, or is that going to be in a future bond issue? What's the deal?
That's part of the, I believe it's the next bond.
The next bond, because that's the redundancy. That's, you don't have any redundancy until that one is rehabilitated.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Yes, Peter.
Just to pick up on something Anisha said earlier, I just wanted to reiterate that, remind people that staff are working under extraordinary circumstances and pressure, particularly over Christmas. I can say, having been on the other side of the fence, that this is the most rigorous committee that I have seen. And it does put a lot of pressure on staff. So I am appreciative of everything they've done.
Yeah.
Here, here.
Thank you.
One more thing I want to bring up real quick.
Yes, Omar.
Most people don't know that in Rio Vista, all those parks, they're getting completely redone. We're gonna be all done with those parks around March. All the stormwater improvements at the park, the Hector Park, have been completed. So the residents are very happy about that. So that's a parallel project that we're doing based on those breaks. So
excellent.
Okay, did the tomato plants stop growing?
What's that?
Did the tomato plants stop growing in the front yards?
No, we tested the soil, still good.
Did you hear about that?
No, what about tomato plants?
There are people along that route where all of a sudden they started having tomato plants pop up in their yard.
Oh my God, seeds from tomato plants migrated?
I guess
that's hysterical.
What happened,
yeah. The sewage, Marilyn, they're in the sewage.
Yeah,
organic.
Right. I'm sure.
Would be from all the tomatoes.
Oh God, you can't say that this is a boring committee. You cannot.
Plus, they got
say
a lot of free fertilizer. You know, that grass should really do well.
Yeah. Okay, gentlemen and lady and staff, I think this has been one of our best meetings, you know, in terms of trying to get a whole lot of information. And I think we're getting close. We're getting close. So Roosevelt would tell me, and Roosevelt, you're probably there and you can hear me. Do I have to ask for a motion to adjourn, or does the chair have the ability to say the meeting is adjourned? Who's the parliamentarian here? I don't remember how it goes.
You don't need a motion. You just simply say the meeting will be adjourned, is my understanding.
Okay, if nobody has any objections, I suggest that the meeting be adjourned and we meet again in another month and continue this very, very heavy discussion we've been having, but very necessary. Okay, guys?
Thank
everybody,
you.
Goodbye.
Toodles.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy New Year.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.